So many people that I have talked to who have been really wanting to write their book talk to me about the struggle to begin, to get started. How do I start? Where do I begin? In today's episode, I want to take that question, how to begin, and literally turn it on its head. I've got some new words for us to use instead of the word begin or start, and I've got some really cool, really simple tips to help you activate your writing. I'm excited you're here, so I can't wait to share. Hello. Welcome to another episode of the Written Compass podcast. Shana Hartman here, embodied writing coach, and I'm excited today to talk about beginnings. So everyone who goes to write something, they have to start somewhere. And the logical idea is that we start at the beginning. And I want to provide you today with a little bit of an alternative perspective. If you've been hanging around me for a while, you know that I don't do things in the usual way. I come from a very embodied social constructivist perspective where I love to make meaning together with you along the way, and today's going to be no different. So I've talked before in previous episodes about not starting at the beginning because that causes a lot of pressure. So first, I want to remind you that when you're getting started with some writing, maybe it is helpful to not try to start at the beginning, to not try to craft that first line, that first paragraph, that opening, whatever it is, because you don't yet know exactly what you're writing. So to assume that you know how to start, how to bring the reader into it is a little bit contradictory, a little bit counterintuitive, which is odd because we've been taught to start at the beginning in our writing in so many ways, particularly in school settings. You start with that introductory paragraph, right? Well, I want to, again, push back on that. And one of the best ways to begin is to not begin at the beginning. A group of us are doing a collaborative book together, and we're writing a lot about being in the in-betweens, particularly as women. Some of us are business owners. Almost all of us run our households in some way, shape, or form. We're caretakers, we're moms, and we sometimes feel like if we don't have a direction or we don't have a focus, then we're like, what am I doing? And we feel like we get confused. And so in this collaborative project, as we're talking about being in the in-between, being in the liminal space between one goal or part of our life and into another, and we're writing about this, we're experiencing that same thing. We're feeling like, what's my focus? Where am I trying to go with this? And if we feel like we don't have it, then we feel like we get confused. So one way when we're trying to get started with our writing, and that we've been talking about in our collaborative book project group, is doing a little bit of focused free writing. And so we've got this initial idea of what is it like being in the in-between? What is it like being in that not quite where we were and not quite where we want to be? And so we've really practiced the idea of focused free writing. So we set a timer and we just literally write what shows up around that main question, around those main ideas, like when has this shown up in our life? When have we experienced it? Are we experiencing it now? What does that look like? What have we learned? We kind of give ourselves some questions that provides us a focus, but you can hear in the questions, they're not super specific. It's just enough to give us a little bit of a direction. Then we set a timer and we just let it rip, right? So that's one way when you're like feeling that pressure to start in a particular place and not feeling like something really clear popping up easily. Sometimes just doing that writing to write in a focused way. So it's not just the sky is blue today, I'm hungry. It's not that kind of open free writing, which I love that too. That sometimes flexes our writer muscle and gets us into the act and the habit of writing. This is more, and this is a Peter Elbow term, focus free writing. Donald Murray talks about this too. Giving yourself a little bit of a focus through a question, setting a timer so that you don't feel a lot of pressure to get so much done at one time, and then just letting what shows up show up. The other thing that I love to do that we often forget is recognizing how much writing is already in existence. So we can do a little bit of matchmaking by gathering our word assets. So one thing we can do, and I've done this and supported some of our collaborative book authors with this, is, okay, where does that idea of the in-between or the liminal space, where have you written about that before? oh man, I remember I wrote this article, or I remember I did this social media post, or I remember I sent this email, or I remember in my program, I've got this whole part where we talk about, something similar. Go ahead and grab that, copy and paste that over into wherever you're working and starting this book writing project. Here's what that is going to do. One, it's going to give you evidence that you have already started and all you've done is copy and paste. So you get this instant like, yes, I have writing. It exists. I can do this. The other thing is it's going to help you start to realize, oh, this makes me think of other ideas. This makes me think of a different story or a different concept that I want to bring in. This starts to give me a little bit of focus, a little bit of organization. I think I want to approach this chapter or section or this book in this way because I see how I've been talking about it and writing about it when I go and gather my word assets. So use what already exists. A lot of people sit and think, oh my gosh, I've committed to this writing project. And then they go, but I have no idea what I'm going to say. I have no idea how to approach it. And I just want to call a little bit of loving BS on that because you've been writing and communicating and sharing your entire life. So there is something that already exists that can at least be a little spark to your writing flame and help you activate this project. In fact, I should call this how to activate instead of how to begin, because I really want to throw out the idea that there is a true beginning to a piece of writing, like the idea that there's one place to start. And just like there's no one right way to do any kind of writing, there's also no one right way to start. So maybe we should just stop saying that. Maybe there's no beginning. We just activate. I like that. Okay, I'm going to stick with that. Tell me what you think about that. Another great way, besides not starting at the beginning, doing the focus free writing, gathering your word assets, the words that already exist out there, is to just tell a story, right? So this really helped one of our clients who's doing the collaborative book project. She immediately thought of a story. This reminds me of this moment. And that story, that experience may not make it in the ultimate final draft, but what it did was it just activated her, just as we were talking about. It got her going. It got the juices flowing and she saw words. And because that story was something that was really comfortable, really familiar for her to write, she was able to get into that writer habit almost immediately. And she's actually already got a full draft of her chapter going that she's ready for feedback on. And we are months ahead of the due date for that. So that's really exciting. And this is where I see a lot of people start, is just starting by telling a story. So just to recap, how to begin, which I'm going to rephrase as how to activate your writing, and this applies for anything, but particularly a bigger project like a book, is to one, stop trying to start at the beginning. It's usually not beneficial and it's usually not something that you can actually do yet because you don't yet know what you're writing. Try some focus-free writing. So maybe come up with a question that can inspire some thoughts or something around your main idea that you can pose as a question. Set a timer. I always love 30 minutes. A lot can get done in 30 minutes. A lot can come out in 30 minutes. And just write what shows up around that main idea, that question that you're pondering. Gather your word assets is another technique. So go find what already exists, even if it's just a line, right? It counts. It helps. And you can use it. You've already written it. You can use it, especially if it's not something that's been published somewhere. We'll talk about that another time, or send me a message if you've got a question about that. You can use your words that you've already written. Like, I know that sometimes feels, I've had people tell me one book that's getting published from our VIP level embodied writing mastermind experience, that author was like, I feel like I'm cheating when I use words that I've already written. And it's such an interesting thing to really lean into as a coach about what that is, what story is showing up there. But you've written a lot, you've communicated a lot, you've shared a lot already. Let's go and source those and just see what's there. It may not all be a good fit, but it helps you start to take a breath and realize, oh, I've already been doing this. I've already been writing this. And it activates you, which is great. And then also just tell a story. Tell an experience or something that showed up with you, maybe a client, maybe a family member. You don't have to use their names. You can use a pseudonym. Again, the whole goal is just to get that writing, that activation, that flame, that fuel to the fire started. I hope this really helped you. I would love to know which one of these you've tried, which one of these you're going to try, which one of these sound really exciting for you, which ones you're like, nope, no thank you. And let me know other ideas. As always, you can come and share the podcast and share comments and ideas with me over on Instagram at @ShaynaHartman_. Thanks for joining me today. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of The Written Compass. If you are loving this content, then please share this episode and tag me on Instagram at @ShaynaHartman_. And if you're wondering how you can implement the ideas I share here and really begin creating your amazing book, I want to connect with you even more. Head over to shaynahartman.com/thewrittencompass to learn even more about not only writing your book, but truly experiencing your words.